Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Kristen LeBlanc. I am the Executive Director of ATAP, and I am really excited to introduce our speaker for today's live stream. We have a little bit of a name change to the topic, but I think you're going to be very pleased with it. It's Strengths in Recruiting, How to Lose Friction and Find Top Talent. So Dr. Joanna Wiesinger is the founder of Thrive with Strengths, which is a coaching and consulting firm dedicated to helping busy leaders get better results with less friction by leveraging their team member strengths. She is a Gallup certified strengths coach, a PhD chemist, a TEDx speaker, and a published author. Joanna loves to read, travel, or dream of snowy slopes where she can ski with her husband and 3 adult children. And I just have to say that we had a lovely conversation before this started. So I think you're gonna in for a real treat. So I'm excited to go ahead and turn it over to Joanna. And I'm gonna go ahead and go off camera. So Joanna, all yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, everyone. I am really excited that you're joining me to talk about a topic that I am passionate about, which is leveraging our strengths at work so that we can thrive and have impact. Specifically today, we will be talking about strengths in recruiting and how we can reduce the friction and help with the challenges that often come with recruiting, and that is finding, attracting, and retaining top talent to our teams and our organizations. Spoiler alert, as Kristen said, I am not a talent acquisition professional. I work with busy leaders like yourselves who are corporate leaders, executives, or business owners, and I help them reduce friction in their line of work by leveraging the team members' strengths. One aspect of my work is screening candidates for these leaders, or onboarding new hires with a strengths-based approach in mind. So as one of my clients refers to me, a strategic partner with a strengths insights. And so that's really what I want to offer to you today. I want to offer you my best practices so that maybe you can walk away with a few new ideas and some tools in your recruiting toolbox so that you can be even more effective and productive in your line of work. I want to start with a quick story. Kristen mentioned that I'm a PhD inorganic chemist by training. I remember when I was looking for a job, this was many years ago, when I was looking for a job as a freshly minted chemist, I sat through many interviews, and I don't remember any of them except for one. And that was the interview where I walked out of it, and within the first 5 minutes, I sent an email to the recruiter asking her to close my file. Now, was it smart of me to do? I'm not sure, because I didn't have a job and I no guarantees of getting a job with other companies. But this I knew. There was no natural flow to the interview. The interviewer didn't make it seem like she really cared about me. She didn't look past my resume, didn't ask me any questions that had to do with me, my talents, my strengths. And if she were the representative of the company, I knew I didn't want to be a part of that company. Fast forward to today. I told you that I do screening and onboarding from the strengths-based perspective. This is what I hear most of the time. On the right-hand side, you'll see a candidate that I interviewed just recently, a candidate for a VP of Ops, and he said, hey, listen, I'm already so impressed with the president. Clearly, he wants to know me for my strengths and the contributions that I will bring to my role. Whether I get it or not, I'm already impressed. And then what I hear from the hiring leaders and what I hear from the team members is, listen, this approach works. And so I'm really here to say, from my perspective, the strengths-based, introducing some elements of a strengths-based leadership to recruiting makes sense to me as the interviewer, makes sense to the candidates, and makes sense to the bosses. So let's dive right in. Let's get on the same page. what is strengths-based recruiting? Well, it really is finding candidates who finding what it is that the candidates love to do, they can't help but do, and what are their motivations. So it's really looking past the competencies, past the skills, into their innate talents and strengths. And then it's about aligning those talents and strengths with the role that we are considering them for. Why does it work, or why is it possibly better than competency-based recruiting? Well, because we're not just looking for candidates that can do the work, but we're looking for candidates that can do the work, that will love the work, and that will thrive in it. And when they do, then there is a long-term viability for them. They will stay with the company. Why it works is because we're going with the grain of the individual. Recently, my husband and I bought teak patio furniture. And as we opened it up, I immediately ran my hand across the furniture and I read it across the grain, friction, and a splinter. Right? Strengths, bringing strengths into recruiting goes along the grain. I cannot think of anything more powerful than sitting across someone else and saying, hey, the talents, the strengths that I see in you will really be welcome and appreciated and valued by the team, by the company that I have in mind for you. Let's check it out. Gallup has done a lot of research around high performers, leaders who excel in their line of work. And this we know based on their studies, that individuals who step into their strength zone, and we'll talk more about what that means, are much more engaged in their jobs, much more satisfied in their lives, and are much more productive, which of course translates to the bottom line for the organizations and translates to better cultures within the organizations. So how does it work? Well, the way I frame it is that strengths-based recruiting really draws on 3 keys of Riston's law of capital. And if you're scratching your head because maybe you've never heard of Riston's law of capital, that's all right. I hadn't heard of it either until a few years ago, and then it all made sense to me. So here's what it is. It really goes back to the banking world where Walter Wriston said, capital will always go where it's welcome and stay where it's well treated. Capital will always go where it's welcome and stay where it's well treated. So I'm wondering if you already see the 3 keys that we can use in strengths-based recruiting. And for me, they are capital, welcome, and treat well. Capital is all about seeing those innate talents and strengths in our candidates, spotting those talents and strengths in our candidates, calling them out, holding up the mirror for them, even if maybe they're not aware of them. So it's all about finding the right candidates. Welcome, it's all about attracting them to the right role, to the right team, to the right organization, because their talents and strengths will be welcome there. And treat well, that key is all about retention, right? When we're treating well somewhere, a restaurant, a retail store, we want to hang around, we want to lean in, we want to engage. So that's the big picture view that I want to offer you. And now let's dive into each one of these keys and really become much more granular and practical in thinking through how strengths or elements of strengths-based approach can help with recruiting. So let's take a look at the first key. It's all about that capital. It's all about really shifting our mindset from looking at just the knowledge, the skills, the competency of a candidate and looking past that into their talents and strengths. What I love about this key is that It acknowledges that really anyone can become competent in something that they're not naturally good at, but they will never excel at it. And research is unequivocal on that point. So let's kind of dive in and let's make sure that we understand what we mean by talents, strengths, and contribution. This is an equation that I always offer to my clients, whether I have one-on-one sessions with them or in a team session. This is the compass, the North Star that I offer to my clients. So contribution is all about results, the value added, the outcome, right? That your candidates would bring to their role, to that team, to that organization. So let's say if you are interviewing for a property manager, let's say, this is a relevant example from my own life. It just happened the other day. Then the contribution that individual has to bring, the results, the actual results they have to bring to that role, is making sure that that property is in a top-notch shape, that the residents feel safe and comfortable in it. If you are interviewing a candidate for an IT executive, then the contribution, the results, the outcome, the value that they would bring to the role has to do with them maybe releasing that piece of software that will help their clients work even more effectively. Research tells us that our best contribution will always come from the point of our strengths. And in the strengths-based movement, we define a strength differently than we might find the definition of it in the Webster's dictionary. So it's that task, that activity that you do with ease and excellence and others notice, but it also is about that jolt of energy that you get when you do it. So you look forward to it with anticipation. And when you're in the middle of it, you might experience the flow. All sense of time disappears. When you step out of it, you might be dead tired, but you want to do it all over again. So imagine if you could find your candidate's strengths, those things that they do with ease, excellence, and enjoyment. That's their sweet spot. That's a powerful thing to find out about someone. So again, if we go back to my example of a property manager candidate, well, maybe the strength that they bring to their role so that they can bring their best contribution is that they're rigorous about the cadence of their inspections of the property. And the fact that they are really good at keeping track of their checklists. As one of my candidates said, I have a checklist for a checklist for a checklist. And she was beaming when she said that, while I was dying 1,000 deaths on the inside because it was not that exciting to me. And that's the beauty of strengths. If we talk about that IT executive candidate, his or her strength might be that they have this strategic way that they think and stay ahead of their clients. They study the industry trends, they study the possible twists and turns in the industry, and they come up with creative solutions also that their clients can be even more effective. Ease, excellence, and enjoyment. So let me ask you, if you would you put into the chat right now what you think is one of your strengths? So remember, the way we define a strength in the strengths-based movement is that task, that activity that comes to you with ease, excellence, and enjoyment. So for example, Kristen, I will call you out. It seems to me after our conversation that one of your strengths is the fact that you connect really well with people. And then you have this, you are this force, that you have this energy where you want to motivate them and inspire them for something that you already see is important to you and the team. Well, that's a strength. So if you would put in the chat what that might be for you, and it could be anything from encouraging others to teaching, breaking, coming up with complex, with beautiful solutions to complex problems. Kristen, anything in the chat?
So I'm impressed. We've got someone who's a strengths finder. Oops, sorry, there's a background noise. A strengths finder person. She says woo is one of her strengths. So
Awesome.
That's obviously one of the top 34, I believe, if that's right. We also have remembering names and details.
Oh, yes.
And creating checklists. LOL, Tina says. I think that's great. Checklists are great. Organization and multitasking. I thrive off of projects and crossing off tasks. Problem solving complex issues with creative solutions. That's impressive. Performance management. Love to help people grow and develop.
Okay.
And then let's see, there's a couple more. Telling the story of the company, the job, the team. Story-based.
Story-based. Love that.
And then we have connecting with others and love a good challenge. And my top strength is maximizer. So she knows the strength finder too. Great. And then we have research, creating processes, streamlining, creating efficiencies. I can find ways to fix a problem. And last but not least, follow up and follow through.
Oh, wow. Okay, what impresses me about these answers, and thank you for playing along, what impresses me about them is that I can, of course, Kristen is a perfect reader of those answers because she brings such energy to them. But what impresses me about your answers is that they are unique. We didn't see very many repetitive strengths, and that you are so self-aware that you can quickly capture them in a word or two or even three. So thank you for that. Okay, so we've talked about contribution. We've talked about a strength, the way we define it in the strengths-based movement. Well, research tells us that there is no strength unless there is an innate talent in us to begin with. And by innate talent, we mean a natural way that we think, feel, and behave. A natural lens and filter on life that if we invest in it, if we become aware of it, then we can grow it into a strength and then ultimately connect that strength to the needs of others for our best contribution. And so here, if we go back to my example of a property manager, maybe the natural talent of that candidate is that they quickly know how to bring order into chaos. Maybe they were that kid who was very uncomfortable with change and disorder or kind of chaos, mess growing up, and knew immediately how to make their world much more manageable through order, through organization, through systems, through processes, as one of you called out as one of your strengths. Well, that's very important for you to know about yourself, what your innate talents are, but is also, of course, very important for you as a talent acquisition professional to know how to recognize those talents in others. So what are those talents? Well, the options are countless, but I want us to, again, if you would play along, I would love for you to tell me which ones are your talents. And so in a moment, I'm going to call out several statements, and I would love for you to, each statement will have a number next to it. If you would put the number next to the statement that resonates with you, that really describes you as something that you are most of the time. So here it is. Is that you? Number one, do you talk to people in elevators, airplanes, stores, wherever you go? Is that a talent? Are we seeing any ones?
Oh, yep. Looks like we got some ones.
Okay, very good. So again, you might be thinking, yeah, what's the big deal? And maybe you kind of shrug your shoulder like, whatever. Well, I'm here to slow down the tape for you to say it's a big deal, because remember, our talents go with us wherever we go. So that same ability that you have to never meet a stranger goes with you when you're sitting across from a candidate and how you connect with them. Number two, you need more time alone than others, more time to think than others. Any twos?
I knew Stephanie. Stephanie said absolutely not to number 1, but she's definitely number 2. So
okay, very good.
I had a
Stephanie.
feeling. So we have a few twos as well. Yes.
Yes, very good. How about you write down a list of things to do and you love checking them off? We know we have someone who already said that checklist is their thing. Tell me are you seeing some 3s?
Lots of 3s. We also have a question. Can you have more than one number? Can we have multiple numbers?
Absolutely. You can claim them all. Absolutely. Number 4 is you seek a familiar face at a party. So you're not that person who gets a charge out of what one of the StrengthsFinder leaders here in the audience said, that we're winning others over, which is all about connecting with others. But this is more about, let me just connect with someone one-on-one and go deeper in a more meaningful conversation.
Lots of 4s.
Okay, lots of 4s. Love that you're here. You're making our group even better. You ask many questions and you realize that you tend to ask more questions than others. How about
couple
you figure
5s.
Okay, couple 5s. How about you figure out the plot of the movie before anyone else? And this is, whenever I ask this question, it always amuses me because I will invariably get an answer, of course, that's the fun part of watching movies, to which I push back and say, not for me. The fun
Not for me either, yeah.
Yeah, the fun part of watching movies for me is being entertained. So don't spoil it for me. But again,
you got a couple 6s, but not as many
couple 6s. Okay, so again, this talent goes with you wherever you go. And it really speaks to you flying maybe at the 30,000 foot view, elevating to that big picture view, which goes with you, of course, to your personal life and to your work. You push the elevator button to remind it that you are there. That is totally me, that sense of impatience, the sense of urgency. Do we have any?
Lots of 7s, yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And then final one, you cry while watching movies, TV shows, or commercials. And
yep.
Okay.
Several 8s.
Very good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for playing along. So these are not quirks. These are not things that are weird about you. And I know you're seasoned leaders who are self-aware, so I know that you know this, but again, it's good to hear it from someone who doesn't even know you very well. So what I want to offer to you now is a way to spot these and many other innate talents in your candidates, and a way to spot not just talents, but also strengths. And I will do that by offering you 5 basic questions. They're strengths-based questions that I will explain as we go through them. And I hope you will let me know in the chat how they resonate with you. So the first question has to do with the clue to natural talent, which is yearning. What are some topics or things that naturally draw you in? Imagine tossing that question to your candidate. I did the other day. And what I heard from the person across from me was, he said, you know what, I just finished a certificate program where to learn about cryptocurrency, because I hated the fact that younger people than me knew so much about it and I didn't really understand the field. Okay, that brief answer told me so much about that candidate. Competitive, check. He used the word hate it. He did not like not being the best. Very a learner, very comfortable going from not knowing much about a topic to being an expert in that topic, right? And so I took that, I synthesized that information, kind of tucked it away and thought to myself, this was actually a perfect match for the culture of the company that we were considering him for. A high growth firm that wants to be a top-notch, lead the field in their area of expertise. Powerful question. Question number 2, what things come easily to you and you're surprised that they don't to others? Imagine tossing that question to a candidate and then listening for the answer. And by the way, this is a really good point. when I approach these questions, I really approach them from the kind of the ABC point of view. A as in asking these questions, B as in being be listening to the answers, and not just the answers, but their body language, but the energy in their voice. Everything speaks, right? That global listening. And then C, coming up with your own conclusions based on their answers. So what things come easily to you? Well, this is where you might get someone kind of shrugging their shoulder, nonchalantly saying, well, I don't know, I see systems and processes everywhere. I'm constantly improving. If I have to do something twice, it quickly becomes a system in my life, right? And they might use the word just. These are all indications that it's an innate talent. And imagine if you were able to harness it for that role, for that team, for their organization. How wonderful. Third question. This one has to do with the flow. When do you experience the flow? And if you remember, the way we define the flow is that sensation where all sense of time disappears, right? We become one with that task or activity. We look up and 4 hours later, here we are still working on something that, and we don't even feel tired. It's the most productive and efficient zone for us. Imagine bringing a candidate to a role where they could step into that flow. So powerful. Question number 4, what would people in your life say that you're good at? So this is all the clue here that we're looking for is glimpses of excellence. And again, you might have a candidate who might say, you know what, I don't really know what I'm good at. Well, that speaks to maybe of their lack of self-awareness, lack of others' awareness. It might be a red flag for you, or it simply might be an opening for you to ask some additional questions. And then the final question is, when do you get energized? So this one is all about, where do you get that jolt of satisfaction, that jolt of energy? Because people individuals, leaders who step into those tasks, those activities where they can get that feedback loop of, okay, I did this and I feel amazing, even though I'm dead tired, they want to do it all over again. And again, what flows out of it is that it impacts the bottom line for the company, and it impacts their culture in the best possible way. Okay, so let's keep going through the 3 keys that Riston's Law offers to us. We just finished the first one, capital, the innate talents and strengths. Key number 2, welcome. So this one is all about attracting candidates, maybe wooing them away from that boss that they love, that role that they're in that is perfectly fine with them, that company that they have been with for 20 years, and convincing them that if they leave it, they'll come to a culture that will welcome their innate talents and strengths. Again, we're looking past the competencies and past the skills. I find that with this key, it really is important to be clear on 2 things: the strengths and the values of the team or the organization that you're considering that candidate for, and the role, really being very clear on the contributions and the strengths necessary or tied in to that role. And when there is a good match, that's when you have a winner. So how do we do that? How do we discover the values, the strengths of that team or that organization when we're maybe not a part of the culture? Gallup has done a lot of research around high-performing teams and strengths-based organizations, and it turns out that the best of the best have a representation in each of the 4 what we call domains of leadership: executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic. And so it really is on you to get a good sense of what the culture of the team organization is. Is it the type of organization where when the prevalent default setting is, let's just get things done. Let's take that idea and let's put boots on the ground and execute. Or is it more of a relational organization where connecting together is really important, spending time together outside of work is fostered and encouraged? Or is it a company where it's all about creative thinking, thinking outside of the box, really stretching towards the future? Or is it a company that where the culture is all about that sense of urgency and impatience and banter and pushback and conflict maybe is even encouraged and not turned down? It sounds to me like several of you speak the language of Clifton strengths. So if you do, you already know that the 34 Clifton strengths are divided tentatively into these 4 domains of leadership. Now, why do I offer this to you? Because it does matter. Each one of the team, each organization has a flavor to them. They have a certain set of unique strengths. These are just 3 of the organizations that I have worked with. And as you can tell, the one in the middle here has, as you can see, there are no influencing strengths in that organization. The default setting has to do with, let's just get going. Let's just get things done. Execution, we grind, we nose to the ground, we get things done. Well, if you were to put a candidate in that type of culture, a candidate who actually loves to influence and impact, there might be friction. There might not be a good match. I'm not saying that it's necessarily that way, but you need to be really mindful of that. So how do you, if you're not part of that team or that culture, how do you pick up on the clues of what's their default setting? Well, these are just some of the words and phrases that you might hear frequently in that culture. And that can lead you back to their default setting. So that's number 1. Know the values and the strengths of that team, of that organization. The second point is that you really have to be clear on the role that you're interviewing that person for. Meaning, once again, I'm going to harp on this. What is the contribution? What are the results? What are the outcomes that we want? Right? And what are the strengths? What are those things that they have to do predictably, consistently, with near perfect precision that will lead to the contribution? And then you have to give it some thought. If you have asked the right questions, if you have enough data to say, oh, okay, hold on, maybe they don't have the strength yet, but I see some innate talents that will really feed ultimately. We can give them time to practice and the skills and the knowledge that ultimately would translate to the results. This is where you can really hold up the mirror for your candidate and say, hey, Jane, I love how your face lit up when you told me about the property that you took over last year, and it was at 80% vacancy, and now a year later you brought it to 96% occupancy. Clearly, you're a get it done type of person, and the job, the type of culture that I am suggesting is we're trying to attract you to will really welcome the metrics orientation and the results driven mindset that you have. I would love for you to consider it, right? You're looking for that match. So very quickly, how it plays out for us in our firm. And there are many different ways to slice and dice a strengths-based approach to screening candidates or onboarding new hires. For me, it's a 3-step process. It starts with the candidate taking the Clifton Strengths Assessment, the top 5. It's a Gallup online tool that takes only 40 minutes to take, and it identifies the intensity of natural talents in that individual. Then they jump on a one-on-one consult with me, a phone call conversation where we do a deep dive into their top 5 talents. And then out of that, I prepare a report to the hiring leader. So it's another look at how I broach it. What you see on the left-hand side is the Strengths Insight Guide. This is what you get when you take the assessment. What you see in the middle is the type of resources that I gather based on our conversation, and then I offer to the hiring manager or director along with a summary where I offer a quick recap of that candidate and with some questions that the hiring manager might ask in the future to get to know the candidate even better. So we've talked about the capital. We've talked about how it's important to welcome or attract candidates to the right culture that will welcome their talents and strengths. And the third key is treat well. Capital will stay where it's well treated. So this one really speaks to retention, and I get it. Once a candidate is a new hire, it really is out of your hands, and there isn't really much that you can do to impact their how long they stay with the company. That said, if you have done the first 2 steps well, then the long-term viability hopefully will happen naturally. And of course, what's at stake here? Well, at stake here is the bottom line. At stake might even be your reputation. So it really is important that we do it well. So with this key, the way I see it is that once the new hire is a part of the new culture, this is where we can really encourage them to do 2 things. And they are simple, but not necessarily easy. We overlook them. Number 1, we can encourage them to over-communicate what it is that they bring and need to be at their best in their role. And we oftentimes, when we're new to a company, it's not easy for us to do. And yet it's so important for us to look at at our boss and say, hey, so since we will be now working together, here's what you need to know. I'm at my best when. I love it when. What I need is, right? Just the other day, I was talking to a client who stepped into a new role. She discovered that her boss actually had never managed anyone else, never had direct reports before, and so stepped into a micromanaging role. It really micromanaging my client, which really sapped her of all energy and creativity, and caused her to reconsider whether she even wanted to stay in that role. Until after some conversation, she got the courage to go back to her boss and say exactly that. Hey, so I want you to know about when I'm at my best. I'm not at my best when you're checking in on me every couple of hours, whether I got the project done. I'm at my best when I have a lot of autonomy, when I have a high ownership score. You can trust me. And I know I have to prove that trust, but this is when I'm at my best. The second part is all about encouraging your new hires to truly invest in their strengths and simply be creative about mitigating their weaknesses. That is the mantra of strengths-based leadership. Studies show us that when we step into a role where we're simply competent in, but we're not innately suited to do it, and we'll simply take it from being competent or below average to maybe being average, right? We can never grow our weaknesses into our strengths. But when we invest in our strengths, they become our superpowers, and others don't even notice those things that maybe we are not good at. And so the example that comes to my mind is of another client who just stepped into a business development position. And so she writes a lot of proposals. And after a few proposals that she has written in this new role, she discovered that really what she does well is kind of write a proposal about 60–70% of the way, and then hand it over to her colleague who really gets jazzed about adding extra details, tweaking some numbers, adding stats, what have you. And all of a sudden, each one of them have found their own lane, and they're this powerful partnership where they're filling in each other's gaps and weaknesses. So 3 keys to using strengths in recruiting: capital, welcome, treat well. The way I see it is that Riston's law of capital really does give us an insight into how we can find, attract, and then retain best talent to our teams and our organizations. But we have to keep in mind that it really flies in the face of some myths that we have believed about leaders, that they should be well-rounded, that they should always meet all the needs of the team. Why have we believed that? And then that best leaders are always working on their weaknesses. Again, back to the first point, so that they're well-rounded. What studies tell us is that best leaders, best candidates will invest in their strengths and hire out their weaknesses. As Sarah Blakely of Spanx says often, and by the way, she is for the second time a billionaire, so she knows what she's talking about. So if I were to recap the power of strengths-based leadership, it's really in resetting our mindset to looking beyond the competency, beyond the skills, looking for sharp candidates, meaning that they are brilliant at some things and really not very good at others, and that's okay. And then finding the right match for them, because we are intentional in finding the strengths and the values of the culture that we are bringing them to. And in that way, we can set them up for long-term success, because we are aligning their best to what the culture of that team or that organization already is. Remember that idea of going with the grain for the candidate. Now, here's the thing. I want to end with a comment about each one of you. So first of all, my question to you is, could you use any one of those keys? Will you use any one of the keys? And if so, how? And here's what I want to say to you. I am nudging you to be intentional about spotting innate talents and strengths in your candidates. You have innate talents and strengths. Some of you have taken Clifton Strengths Assessment, wonderful. Some of you have taken many other assessments, and so you are an aware leader. Well, then use that in your talent acquisition field. If you are that person who needs a little more time to think, ample time to think, who is a strategic thinker with kind of flying at the 30,000-foot view, use that in the way you find, attract, and then ultimately help retain candidates. Maybe it's through creative ways that you maybe produce videos, or some of the systems and processes that you put into place. If you're that person who is much more relational, use that. Many of you might know Fanny Donegan. She's a good friend and a colleague, and one who has splashed me with her innate talents and strengths of really being able to connect with others on a one-on-one basis. If you've ever been listening to Fanny's LinkedIn Live or been interviewed by her, then you know she makes you feel as if you were the only person in the world, and she makes you feel like she really knows you. Use that. If that is you, use that super tool to connect with the candidates that you are interviewing. What I'm proposing to you is that infusing some elements of strengths-based approach to this field really can reduce friction and help you overcome the challenges in finding, attracting, and retaining best talent. And of course, at the end, it's a win-win for you and for your clients. That is it. Kristen, for me, if I am happy to field any questions, any chat.
Yes, thank you so much.
Right.
That was fabulous, fantastic, and very exciting. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We did get one question that I'm going to go ahead and answer. I was typing, but I'll say it. She missed the beginning. Will the recording be available? And the answer is yes. So, and she also said great content. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Donna.
Yes,
it was great content. So we'll have a recording available later this week. So if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
And certainly if your questions come later, please feel free to reach out. You have my contact information here. Really what the overwhelming message I want to leave you with is that those companies who have switched from competency-based recruiting to strengths-based recruiting, and I'm not necessarily even asking you to do the complete switch, but those that have did it because they didn't have enough quality candidates, and those candidates and ultimately the new hires were not staying around long enough. And so companies such as American Airlines, Starbucks, Facebook, Stryker, they all have stepped into that strengths-based approach and have seen numbers and customers satisfaction go up and productivity go up and staff turnover go down. This really works.
So Joanna, we have a question. Can we get the deck? Should they email you directly or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we got, she said, this is terrific. Thank you. This methodology is a game changer for recruitment teams. So that's a winning endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your reaction.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be in touch with the recording. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you, Kristen.